everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Unsung Heroes. We are so thankful you can join us today, and we will be having the testimony of the evangelist's wife, Antayia Brunson from San Antonio, Texas. We welcome you and your husband to the show. Will you guys say hello to our audience first?
Hello.
Will you guys briefly share with us where you are and what God is doing in your lives and in your ministry right now?
So right now we're living in San Antonio, Texas. I'm an evangelist. Been doing that now full time for roughly 2.5 years. And it's been an exciting chapter, exciting journey, just learning as a family, as a couple, learning ourselves as individuals. Before that, we were in New Jersey pioneering for about 6 years. We got sent out in 2017. And, God just dealt with us, me and just both of us about positioning ourselves for the ministry of evangelism in roughly 2022. And, made the switch in 2023. And it's been moving. But from that point, God's really helped and showed us that this has been, where he's wanted us and needed us in these past 2.5 years. So it's just been a great time, just seeing what God's been doing and, just trying to learn the lessons along the way.
Yes, amen. Pastor Lacy, I know you probably have a lot of things to do today, so we'll release you here in a few minutes. But before you go, will you please share with our audience why Antayia is an unsung hero to you and to your ministry?
Absolutely. There's several reasons, the first one being that no one, sees that, when I can have like a moment of doubt, maybe confusion or clarity, lacking clarity per se, that she's always someone that I can reach out to, on a personal level. Like, yeah, I can, I have my pastor, we have a close relationship, but there's something different about a husband and wife. You've seen each other grow, you've been together for so many years. We've known each other for, been married now 12 years, but we've known each other a little longer. So, there's personal details that when I speak, she gets it. She understands me. She knows how to communicate to me. And that's so needed, as a man, that there's just times that, I do need to be open. I do need to be able to express without feeling, like I gotta, watch what I say, or not feel like I can't be honest about what's going on. But, it's just moments of being vulnerable that as a husband and wife, you have that access, you have that availability. So that's a blessing to me because she knows how to pray, what to pray for, right? She just knows me. And that's so helpful just to be able to have that in my corner, that as I'm ministering, that as I'm going around traveling, I can have that in my corner. And then also, there's just the aspect of that she releases me. Most people see the evangelist, but they don't see that there's a wife behind the scenes that has obeyed God, that has said, God, I surrender my will. I surrender my desires as a wife to say, I want my husband home. I want him around. Every woman has a family vision. Husband's home with the kids. There's a family vision, a family dream, but she sacrifices that to release, to say, hey, go do the will of God. This is the will of God. And I know the best place for all of us is in the will of God. And she does that daily. She does that over and over. So, I look at it like, here's Moses. He's on his missionary journey and we don't read about his wife and kids back at home. He's out doing the will of God, but we don't read about it until before and after. What was that time frame like? He's gone. She has no idea. Is my husband even alive? Right? Like, he's a fugitive going back into a place where he's wanted. So there's so many dynamics. It's like the kids are there. He's got 2 sons, but yet she's home. She's back there with her father-in-law, but he's on this missionary journey doing the will of God. And she enabled that. She could have easily said, no, I don't agree. I don't want this. But his mind was at peace about his home life, about his kids, about his wife, because his wife wasn't fighting it. And, they eventually reconnected afterwards. And that says a lot, because it's a lot to be out and away and doing ministry. But, just like with Moses, when I'm out, I don't have those worries about, is my wife okay? Is she, does she, not want this no more because, from time to time, we just talk and just ask her, where are you right now? How are you feeling right now about the will of God? She'll just tell me, this is the will of God. Just when you're home, be home, help, be present. But it's the will of God. So go do the will of God. So that's such a weightlifter, like that I can go minister, focus, lock in. And then when I come back home, I could feel it. There's no animosity. There's no tension. And that goes down to our kids because we have 7 kids. We have a 2-month, old baby. Our oldest is 13. So there's a lot of weight. There's a lot of responsibility. She's got a lot to manage, but I can come home and I don't feel that tension. Like I don't feel like there's a home life that's fighting with the ministry. It feels in sync. So, that speaks volumes because that all is just an attribute to who she is, her prayer life, her focus. She has the right view and the right heart about ministry. She hasn't allowed it to twist her heart about ministry, about God. She has the right mindset about it. Like, this is the will of God. And the will of God, it's a sacrifice for her, it's a sacrifice for me, it's a sacrifice for the kids, but because she keeps the right mindset about it, it keeps the home atmosphere right when I come home. It keeps our marriage, our communication line open. Just for those alone, it's a lot that attributes to her, being that unsung, unseen, right? That hero that I speak about her often when I go travel and I tell people, she's the hero. She enables me, and every time I leave from a revival, they always tell me, tell your wife thank you for releasing you. Tell your wife thank you. We appreciate it. Tell your wife because they get it. We all get it. Like these are wives behind the scene that are enabling their husbands to do something for God, and that makes a world of a difference. So that's why she's the unsung hero.
Yes, amen. Thank you so much for that. And thank you for sharing that with our audience because I think a lot of people, we all get excited when we have evangelists come to church, right? Because it's like revival week and everybody's hoping to get, a word or, just something, some type of encouragement, some type of deliverance. But yeah, when you sit and think about it, there is a whole family that for probably 3 weeks haven't really seen their husband or their dad. But it's that sacrifice. So thank you so much for that. We appreciate that.
Absolutely.
And yeah, we'll definitely release you to go do whatever you need to do today, and we'll jump right into Antaya's story.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. So Antayia, let's jump into your story. Where did you grow up? Where are you from?
So I grew up originally in New Jersey, a town called Red Bank, New Jersey, which is kind of on the shore. I lived there until 8th grade, and we moved. My family, my stepdad had gotten a job transfer, and so our family uprooted and moved to North Carolina. And I spent, all my high school and some of college in North Carolina. That's where I met my husband. But yeah, growing up, I grew up, like I said, up until 8th grade in New Jersey with my mom and my stepdad. My mom got married when I was about 7. And so for most of it, well, up until then, it was a single parent home. My mom was by herself raising my sister and I. My dad went to prison when I was a baby. I didn't actually meet my dad until I was about 5 or 6. So I grew up with just my mom and sister for a while. It was a fairly Christian home. My mom wasn't saved though. We did go to church every Sunday whenever there was church. I grew up in a very religious family, so church was a central part of our family. It was a part of the family culture, but I couldn't say that my mom was actually saved. Not until after my little brother was born. So after she got married, her and my stepdad had a son. And it was after he was born that my mom got saved and I began to see, the changes in her life. But yeah, church was always a part of our lives, a part of our family. It was something we looked forward to, but same with me, I wasn't saved at all. I didn't get saved until I was pregnant with my son, which was when I was 19, 20. But yeah, growing up, I would say that I had a good childhood, even though it was just my mom for a while. I did have a fairly good childhood. I had struggles I was a middle child, so I don't know, there's a stigma with middle children.
Right.
And so I kind of felt a little bit, like I wasn't the oldest. My sister was very outgoing, always very outgoing, and always, I don't really know how to really describe her personality, but she was very likable. And then you have my little brother, who's the baby. He's the only boy in the family. So I was kind of sandwiched in the middle, and I kind of felt that like I just didn't really have a place exactly. But not because it was intentional, not because I was just ostracized or anything like that, but I guess it just wasn't what I was wanting. And so I had feelings of rejection, early on. And I was very insecure, very shy child. Until I became a teenager. I want to say around like 14, 15 is when I started. I mean, that's also the time where your hormones are like full blast, right? But that was the time in life where I started exploring boys and I started noticing, the attention I was getting from boys, and I was loving it because I was getting the attention that I wasn't getting at home,
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
so it thrust me into a really well, I was very promiscuous early.
Hmm.
So I mean, everything that goes along with that, I lived a double life though, because again, at home we were a Christian family, and so my mom was very strict. We had a lot of standards, a lot of rules. Now looking back on it, being a mom, it was everything that I would do for my kids now, But back then, you're just like, you don't want to listen to your parents. You think your parents are too strict or whatever. But in school, I was living a completely different life. I would skip school to be with boys or to go smoke. I started getting high when I was like 15. I had a cousin who introduced me to weed, and so I would get high all the time. On the weekends, maybe starting at 16, I would get drunk. And it wasn't for me. It wasn't to fill a void necessarily. It was just fun. It was just outright fun, and just like
Right.
the sin is pleasure for a season, and it was that season of my life. I was living it up in my own mind. I was living it up. And then so that was all through high school. I was just living this double life. And when I was 19, so let me backtrack a little bit. I had gone to college, but I only did a year and I dropped out because it just it wasn't what I wanted, and plus I didn't have the focus because I was living for the weekend. So I left college, and it was when I left college that I realized my life is not right. Up until then, I didn't really care. I knew the gospel, I knew the truth, but I remember always telling my one aunt, she was a pastor's wife, and I would always tell her, when I turn 30, I'm going to get saved. But until then, I have stuff I need to do, like really ignorant, right? And so when I left college, that was when I realized, like, because I had so many near death experiences being high. Like, I remember once just getting so drunk and, you pass out and you start to vomit. If I didn't have a friend who was coherent to push me over, you know, I could have died then. So many experiences where, I could have been raped or, just
Right.
horrible things could have happened to me because I was just living in the moment and reckless. And so, again, when I left school, that was when I realized, okay, I need a plan. Like what are you doing with your life? Because my mom had told me the only way you're coming back to this house is if you're in school or you have a job. So now that I'm leaving school, I'm busting my butt to find a job so that I can have somewhere to live. Because the only other place I had to live was my cousin's drug house, and I could not do that. And so I ended up getting a job, and here I am trying to do all these things, to get my life back on track. But not once did I think, you know what, you need God. It wasn't like that. It was just do what you need to do, figure it out. And I came to a point where I was like, you know what, I can't do this by myself. Like, I don't have the answers. But again, I never thought, hello, you have the answer right here, in God. I just kept thinking to myself, what do I need to change? What do I need to do? Maybe I need new friends. Maybe all these superficial things. And so I remember I had gotten tied up with this guy. And I remember talking to my cousin once. I just had felt really sick. And she was like, all my cousins call me Toddy, right? So she was like, Toddy, I think you might be pregnant. And I'm like, no, I'm not pregnant. Like, there's no way I could be pregnant. And so she was like, okay, you're in denial, but I'm pretty sure you're pregnant, so you might want to go get checked. So I did. I got a pregnancy test, and sure enough, I found out I was pregnant. This was when I was 19. And that moment when I saw that positive, I mean, it's like my whole world came crashing because not only did I feel the weight, the reality, like, oh my gosh, I'm about to have to be responsible for a whole other human being. I don't even know how to take care of myself. But then it was like the reality that everyone now is going to know because, again, I'm living this double life. Nobody has any idea that I am near pothead, that I get drunk all the time, that I'm sleeping around with these guys. No one knows this stuff because I played the game. And so now everyone's going to know all of my sin is about to be exposed. Like the Bible says, what's done in the dark, will be exposed. It's gonna be exposed. And so I was exposed, and I was just I felt humiliated, even though no one even knew. It was just me and God in that moment. I felt so humiliated. I felt just awful because not only that, I knew that not only was I harming myself, I'm hurting God, because there was so many times where he spared my life. Like I said a few minutes ago, he spared my life from so many things, but all I was doing was thinking about myself. I never once gave him any thought. And so I just remember in that moment, I'm like, God, I cannot do this. Like, I am so sorry. I'm so sorry it took this, for me to open my eyes and see that I need you, but I need you. And it's not a question if you're real. I know that you're real. I believe everything that I was taught, that Jesus was coming back, that if I died in my sin, I was going to go to hell. Like, I believe that Jesus died on the cross for my sins. I just wasn't ready to give them up, But in that moment, I said, you know what, God, I'm done. Like, I can't hold this anymore. I'm tired of having to be validated by guys. Like, I'm tired of it always being about my looks and my body. Like, I'm tired of having to get high, just to function. I'm tired of, in order to have a good time, I have to be drunk out of my mind. Like, I'm tired of this. It was getting old, and I felt like I was getting too old to be living like that, And so I said, God, I'm sorry. Like, I need you. I need you to come into my life and to change my heart. I don't want to just know you. I need a real relationship with you because I don't want to die and go to hell. I don't want to live a life of misery on earth and then die and spend eternity in hell. So I repented that day, and then I remember going to church. This was around Easter. And I remember that Sunday when I went to church, it was what they call the Palm Sunday, which is the Sunday before Easter. And I already knew what was going to be preached because that's what they preach about. It's the week before Jesus is going to go to the cross, so I knew everything that was going to be talked about. But this Sunday, I used to go to a church that had a woman pastor, and that Sunday, that pastor, she did like some kind of illustration where it was the story of like where they laid down the branches when Jesus was coming in, and they sang Hosanna. And so the illustration, they had laid down palms, and so it was an invitation to take up your cross, right? To go to the cross, that you were gonna walk. It was like a symbol, like it sounds really religious, but just go with me. So walk across these palm branches, and it's like you're taking the place of Jesus. Like, you're about to go to the cross. You're about to have your sins nailed to the cross, but you're doing it, if that makes sense. And so as I'm walking across these branches, I'm like, I mean, I could feel it. It's like the Holy Spirit got involved and made me feel the weight of that moment, of my sins. Like he showed me, like, this is what I did for you. I took this punishment for you so that you don't have to live like this. And I was like, oh my God, like you really did do this for me. You suffered so that I don't have to suffer. And here I am, just living like you did nothing. And so that was when I was so broken, and I really, I had prayed in my room that day, but in this moment was when I really just surrendered. Like, God, I need you to wash me in the blood that you shed on that cross. I need you to deliver me and set me free. And so I felt so relieved, like the weight was just that heavy weight was just lifted. I know we say it all the time, and it kind of can sound cliche, but I mean, it is so real that I felt like my shoulders were upright after that. Like
Right.
I had this
Right.
breath of fresh air, knowing that there was hope for me, you know? And so God just began to change my life after that. Like I didn't have the desire immediately. I didn't have a desire to get high. Like I had neighbors who would sit in their garage and smoke all the time, and the smell of it just made me nauseous, right? And then not because of the pregnancy, like it was sickening
Because
to
of
me.
the
Exactly, exactly. So God just began to change me little by little. And so I realized that the church I was in was messed up. Not even just because it was a woman preacher, because at that point I didn't know that was wrong. It was just I started to see how many people were disingenuine. Like you're saying that you're saved, you're saying you're Christians, but on the weekends, you're going out to clubs and lounges, and you're having drinks and on all this stuff. Like you're watching porn, like you're doing all these things. How can you say that you're a Christian? And so I knew that I got saved to change all that, not to keep doing it.
Right.
And so I was like, I need to find another church. And so around this same time, this was my husband and I reconnected. So we met in college and we separated. We had separated from a couple of years because he moved. He had gotten a job again. He also, I mean, I don't want to tell his story, but he also had dropped out of college and he ended up getting a job in Indiana. And so I moved to Atlanta with my mom. And so it was in Atlanta, everything that I just told you. When I found out I was pregnant, where I got saved, that was in Atlanta. And so my husband and I knew we wanted to get married and we wanted to live clean. And so he had also gotten saved. And so he came to Georgia, surprised me, came to Georgia, and we ended up getting married a couple months later. And in that time, again, it was the same thing with him. Like he knew he had a heart for people, he had a heart for evangelism, but just didn't really know what that meant. He had always done music. And so he wanted to use his music to help people, to evangelize, but just didn't really know what that looked like. But we both just knew, like, this is not it. We didn't get saved to be religious, to be doing this. And so we were praying, God, send us to a church where we can be serious, where people love you, they want to serve you. And so we ended up finding this church where it wasn't even a real church. It was a husband and his wife who were doing services in a hotel. And so we find this couple, and hold on, I'm not getting ahead of myself, am I?
Fine.
Okay.
I did want to backtrack just a little bit. When back to your childhood, if we can just kind of circle back there, and then we'll
Yeah.
come back to where you are.
Mhm.
You had mentioned that your birth father was in prison, and you didn't meet him till you were about 6 or 7.
Mhm.
What did that look like for you as a child? Did you did he just become a part of your life, or was it just a real quick in and out? And then did you have a relationship with your stepfather, or was there no real strong male figure in your life, and maybe that's why you kind of went the route that you went with being promiscuous and the drug use? And
Yeah,
what did
so
that look like?
So before I met him, I can't say that I really knew the difference. I knew that I had a father because I had a relationship with his family, like my grandmother and my uncle on his side. We would spend time with them. So I knew that he existed, and I knew that he was there somewhere, but I can't say I really felt, well, I didn't realize that there was a weight of him not being there. I knew that it wasn't normal because I had cousins who had, like, my mom's sibling. My mom is one of 6. She has another sister, and then the other 4 are boys. So I knew my uncles had, they were married. I saw them with their children. I saw that. I saw 2-parent homes, but it was always just me, my mom, and my sister. So I didn't really think any much of it. Uh, but I did know that I always wanted, because I would see the girl cousins with their dad. I would see how, they would, get hugged by their dad or picked up by their dad. Like I saw stuff like that, and I always kind of wanted to be a daddy's girl. But
Right.
I just kind of thought, well, that's not your life. So, I went through a season of bullying where I was bullied real bad. And so I became like really harsh, like attitude, like always wanting to fight. That's the type of person that I was growing up because of the bullying, because I finally started standing up for myself. And so I figured this is the only way that I'm not going to get bullied. So that's the person I became. But in that time, I remember feeling like I wish I could go to my dad like I wish I had my dad
Right.
help me do this. But again, it wasn't really like recognizably like hard. It's just, again, this was the life I had. So when my mom got married, my stepdad, looking back, I can say that he really did try. My mom was very guarded. She didn't want him correcting us. So when he would try to get involved, with discipline, she always jumped in. And we know that that's like a big no-no. Even if it's the biological parents, like you just mind your business, like let dad be dad. So he would try, but she was very, like I said, she was always getting in the way. And so I feel like that hindered us from having a relationship that we could have had. My sister and I were very disrespectful to him. The very thing that my mom did, we did that to him, because it was like, well, in our eyes, he doesn't have the right to tell us anything, it wasn't a relationship that it could have been. And so then when my dad did come, when I did finally meet my dad, it was very natural, because you could tell that's how you could tell that my sister and I were longing for that, because it's just like things picked up right where they left off. It was only a weekend relationship. He lived in New York. Ended up getting married, and he lived in New York with his wife. And so we would go with him on the weekends, and it was pretty much like, okay, I give you money, and I don't know. I don't know. It wasn't horrible, but it wasn't really like a genuine relationship. Okay. So it wasn't.
Your relationship with your sister during this time, was she kind of going down the same road as you as far as in, the rebellion, or did she go a different way? Were you guys close during this time?
Yes, so my sister and I are very close. We always have been. We're not even 2 whole years apart. So we're close in age, but because we were always relying on each other, because again, before my mom got married, she was a single mom. So we spent early on, we spent time alone. Like having like walking home from school. Like my sister learned very early how to cook and even do our hair, and so we became very close because of that, like surviving with each other,
Yeah.
And then
Yep.
she was rebellious in the form of attitude. Like she did not have a good relationship with my mom at all, and she actually doesn't remember a lot of things that happened. Like I think like as a defense mechanism, she kind of blocked things out.
Yeah. Yeah.
But our relationship has always been very close, always. So
You had mentioned just briefly in there that you had some near-death experiences when you were living completely just in the world and in sin. Are there any of those that you would like to share that really kind of stood out to you?
2 of them. So the one that I mentioned, where I almost choked, I wasn't even supposed to be where I was. Actually, all of the times I can think of, I wasn't where I was supposed to be, because again, I'm living a double life. One year, this time, it was actually for a New Year's service. So it was always tradition in our, growing up, where you went to church for New Year's Eve. So this particular year, I begged my mom to let me go with my friend to her church, because she did go to church. But again, it was just one of those things you do. Honestly, in the Black culture, everybody goes to church, right? So it's not abnormal to be in church and just be living a double life. So my mom let me go with my friend, and I wanted to go because I knew that her mom allowed her to drink. So I'm like 16 at this point. I knew that her mom allowed her to drink. And so what she did was she would go to church, and then after church, she would go off and club or party or whatever, and she would buy alcohol and leave it at the house so that my friend, she could get drunk in a quote unquote safe environment, right? So that's what we did. So I was supposed to go to church, and then I was supposed to go back, like after church. I was supposed to have gone back with my aunt. So after church, though, I went to my friend's house and got drunk. I passed out on her couch, and she comes. She says she told me that she heard this noise, and so she went to go look, and it was me choking. So she pushed me over and, threw up all over the floor. But if she had not intervened, I would have died. no doubt I would have died.
Right.
So another time around the same time, like 15, 16.
When you were 16?
Yes. So the summer in between my freshman and sophomore year, a couple of us cousins, we spent the summer with my aunt, and we all got jobs at Six Flags in New Jersey. So we would go and take the bus together. Like we just, that's what we did all summer. So one day, I got permission to hang out with a friend, and again, it was supposed to be at her house, but I ended up going somewhere else. We took the bus to another town, and we went to go smoke. So I'm getting high, and this weed was laced with something. Obviously we didn't know that, but this weed was laced with something, and I had a temporary paralysis because of it. And I just remember sitting on the couch, and I remember feeling like I want to get up to use the restroom, but I can't get up. And so I'm telling myself, get up. Like, go use the bathroom. If you need to use the bathroom, get up. But I couldn't. I literally could not get up. I couldn't move my feet. I couldn't move my arms. The only thing that I could do was move my head side to side. I could not move my body. And so I remember sitting there crying, not audibly, but tears just rolling, because I'm thinking, I'm about to die. Like, I didn't know what was happening to me, but I'm thinking I'm about to die. And so I remember my friend standing in front of me, and she was like, Antayia, are you all right? What's wrong with you? So because everybody's high, now everybody's laughing. This is a joke because you laugh at everything when you're high. So she's laughing, and she's like, get it together. Like, what is wrong with you? But in my mind, I'm like, I'm about to die. And so I remember crying, and I'm praying. I'm like, God, please help me. Like, I don't want to die like this. The reality that I'm about to go to hell was very real in that moment. And so I just remember, like, God, please, send a prayer. Like, if you get me out of this, if you help me, I promise I'll never smoke again. It was the biggest lie, but he helped me, because in that very moment, it was like something unlocked, and the sensation returned to all my limbs. And I remember getting up, and I just ran to the bathroom, splashed water on my face, and I'm like trying to snap out of it because I have to get out of here. Like, I don't belong here, and I need to go. Like, if I die here, who's gonna know that I'm even here? So I remember that, splashing that water on my face, and I was like, I have to go. I told my friends I have to go, and I took a cab back to my aunt's house. But I always remember those times because it was, in that moment, it was only a prayer of fear. It wasn't genuine. And I always think, like, God, you're so gracious that you didn't have to help me. You could have let me die in my sin. It happens to so many people. And I think it's one of the reasons why I serve God, why I allow him to use my life, or that sounds kind of weird, but it's why I make myself available to him, because I could be dead, so there's no reason.
God's grace was still like covering you, and you cried out in a prayer that you said was just out of fear, but yet he was still there.
Exactly. Something that he didn't have to do. And so I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful.
Amen. Well, let's jump back up so now you're 19, right? You just found out you're pregnant. You'd moved to Georgia. And you said you had found. Now, were you married at this time, or you guys were just kind of looking for a church and you found one in a hotel?
Yeah. So I was not married yet. When I had my son, I was not married. So
How far along were you in your pregnancy?
So I had already had him. So it's kind of all over. So my son is not by my husband. I had him before my husband and I get married. In that time that we were separated, that we were not together. So when he came back into the picture, I kind of consolidated it all. But when he came back into the picture, Bryson was already about 5 months. So I had already turned 20. And so we reconnected, but we didn't get married until the following year. So when we got married, Bryson would have been a year already. So he turned a year in August. I was already 21 at that point, and we got married September of 2013. So it was after getting married that we together started trying to look for a church, which is when we found the hotel. So we started going because we just connected with this couple for whatever reason, but it wasn't a good ministry. It's just we connected with these people. So we were going, and my husband has always been a musician. So he started, kind of helping them with their song service. He would bring his keyboard and play for their song service. but it was just dry and dead, and we knew that wasn't it. So we're just contending, and so my husband would just sit there while the guy was preaching, and he would just read his Bible because he's like, I'm not getting anything from this man. So he would just read his Bible. So after every service, I would ask my husband, "What'd you read? Like, did God speak to you? You know, what'd you get?" And so this particular service, I remember the service ended and I went to use the restroom. While I'm in the bathroom, I have never heard God speak to me. I mean, before then and after then, this is literally the only time I've ever heard God speak audibly. And he said, "I want you to move." So I knew it was God, though. Even though I've never heard it, I just knew it was God. And
Right.
so I'm like, "Okay, God, where do you want me to move?" And he said Texas. And so I'm washing my hands at the sink while this is happening, and I mean, I didn't speak to him out loud. I was in my heart that I said this. And he said Texas, and I laughed out loud because I'm like, that's crazy. So there's a lady next to me, and she kind of gave me that that side eye, like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, God, seriously, like, okay, I'll move, but Texas, really, like, seriously, where? And again, I heard him say Texas. So okay, I finish up in the bathroom, and I'm like, I gotta talk to my husband. So I said, babe, I think I heard God speak to me in the bathroom. And he was like, well, what did he say? And so I was like, I think he said that we need to move. So he was like, really? Like, he's like kind of shocked. He's like, really? He kind of chuckles a little bit. And I'm like, why are you laughing? He was like, it's because I think God said the same thing to me. So
Oh,
I was like, where did he say? So he was like, well, you tell me first. And so I said, and so again, he's laughing and he shows me, he wrote it down in his notebook and he shows me. And he said, I literally wrote the same thing down. He was like, but I said, God, you're going to have to tell my wife because she's not going to believe.
it is right there. Yep.
Exactly. And
That's
so
God.
so he confirmed it, and so he had just gotten a job as a security officer overnight, right? Like dirt cheap, dirt pay. It's like dirt pay.
Right.
And so he told his boss, he was like,
It wasn't a heartache for him to be putting in his 2-week notice.
it really wasn't. It really wasn't. But he was like, that week, he was like, listen, I'm gonna finish out this week, and that's it. I can't work no more. We're moving. So we did. He finished out the week, and that Friday, I think it was it was a Friday, Saturday morning. I'm sorry. We got up Saturday morning and drove from Georgia to Texas. So during this time, during the week leading up to it, right, we already don't have anything because we're poor, right? But I could just like feel like God's telling me, like urging me to leave things, right? As I'm trying to pack up. And I'm thinking, that's the devil. I'm not leaving my little bit of stuff. I already don't have anything. Why would I leave it? And so I felt like I was dealing with me, but I just ignored it and I just packed up everything. And so during this time also God's like my husband's contending like where in Texas are we gonna go? So tells him San Antonio. So now it's Saturday morning, everything's in the car. I mean, it's like jam packed, our car. And we're sitting there and I'm like, where in San Antonio are we going? He's like, you know what? I don't even know. So he opens up the GPS is when we had one of those TomToms. He opens it and the 1604 loop highlights to him and he clicks it and we just go. And we're like happy go
Wow.
lucky. We're all excited for our journey. Like, right? This is crazy. My mom's crying. Like, we had dinner with her and she's like, why do y'all have to go? Please don't go. Don't take my baby. This is our first grandchild. She's like, don't take my baby. But we're like, no, we know we heard God. We're going to go. So we set off and go and we get to Alabama and all of a sudden we're driving down the highway and we hear our tire blow up. So we coast over to the side of the road and it was like completely shredded. So we had so much stuff in this car that the bumper fell on the tire. And so we have to start taking stuff out and we have to leave it on the side of the road. And instantly I thought I wasn't supposed to take it.
When God was telling you leave stuff.
Exactly. Like I wasn't supposed to take it. So, but I'm like, it is what it is. We got to leave it. But we didn't know what to do after that. So we just start praying. We get in the car, we start praying, we read the Bible, and God speaks to get out and walk. So we get out and walk. And as we're walking down this highway with our baby, this lady pulls up and she asks us if we need help. So my husband's like, yeah, we just need to get a tow truck. So the lady takes us to a gas station and it was like it was a godsend. Like, you could just tell in that moment that this was such a godsend because, I mean, this was like the cleanest car I've ever been in in my life. And it was just like peaceful. It was an older lady. She had her little Christian radio playing and it was just peaceful. And so we get there she takes us to the rest stop, the truck stop, and we get out and she's like, I really pray for y'all's journey, that you get to where you're going safely. And she's like, I really wish I could help you more, but all I have is this 20. So she gives my husband a $20 bill and she's like, I'll be praying for y'all. God bless you. So we go ahead and get the tow truck. It was like over $200, which was like all of our money that we had. Like, I mean, we were so broke, Ryan. So we end up getting the tire fix and everything. We set back on the road. We make it to Texas, but we get to Houston and we're out of gas and we're out of money. So we get to the gas station and we're just there. Like, I'm sitting in the car looking at my husband like, do you have money that I don't know about? And he's walking back and forth like trying to figure out what to do because we have no gas. And then all of a sudden he remembered the $20 that the lady had given. So he put that $20, and that $20 miraculously got us from Houston to San Antonio. That is a 3.5-hour drive.
Wow.
Even back then in 2013, that is not logical, but we make it. And so we get there to San Antonio, and that we had like the biggest fight of our marriage because I am stressing out. Okay, like, we're in San Antonio now. What are we doing here? Right? God's not speaking anymore. It's quiet. And so I'm scared because I'm like, did we really hear from God? Like, what are we doing? We have a baby. It's not just us. Like, what are we going to do? At that point, they had a cold front. Like, it wasn't even supposed to be cold at that time of year in San Antonio, but we had the biggest cold front and it was freezing outside. So we get it's time to go to bed. We have no money to get a hotel. We don't know what we're going to do. So I remember we're going to look for a hotel, like a parking lot we could sleep in. And we found an embassy suite. As we're going to it, we passed by what is now our church. And there was a sign, out front, the Potter's House sign. And so I remember like, oh, that's cool, the Potter's House. But we never thought anything of it. It was just a quick hi bye, pass by the sign. We sleep in the parking lot of the embassy suite with no gas. Again, remember, we just use everything to get there. Miraculously, our car stays on all night with the heat on because we have a baby. And so we prayed like, God, you have to help this car because we cannot sleep in this car with a baby with no heat. Okay, the car stays on all night. In the morning, we are desperate. We need to find a church because we need some direction. So we Google Christian churches, and the church that we found that we were going to go to, we get there and it's an empty parking lot, like no building, nothing. So in that moment, both of us at the same time think, oh, the Potter's House. Let's try the Potter's House. So we go back to it. We drive there. It's right before prayer is about to start. So majority of San Antonio is Mexican. So we get there and that's what we see. We see this Mexican couple walk in. My husband goes inside and it looks like everybody's Spanish. But he asked, do you guys speak English? They were like, yeah, we have everything here at this church. So you guys can come in. We came in. We start somewhere along the line. My husband talked to my pastor, and my pastor, and this is another miracle, my pastor does not give money. Like, my pastor will not give anybody money. If you're hungry, he might give you something to eat, but he will not give you money. He gave my husband money to fill our gas tank that day, not knowing anything about us. But we went through the service and we just felt so at peace. Like, we knew this was where we were supposed to be. Right? So we go through the whole service and it's nothing like we ever experienced, right? We grew up in the Black church. It is animated, okay? Like, the music is lively. Everybody's all over the place. But this church was nothing like we had ever experienced. But we felt so at peace. Like, you could feel God in that place. So after service, a couple invited us to have fellowship at their house. So we went over there. We had lunch. And we didn't really tell anybody at first our story because we didn't want handouts, like, we're like, God, if this is you're gonna open the doors and make it work. Like, we don't want to be begging people. So eventually, though, we did tell them because it just kind of started getting awkward. Like, where are you from? So we told them the story, and that was all to it. They invited us back to service. We get back to the service, and after the evening service, that couple who invited us to their house, the husband goes to mine and says, I don't normally do this, but me and my wife really felt God leading us to invite you to stay with us, if y'all don't have any place to go.
Wow.
It was all
Wow.
God. They had a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old. Like, we think back, like, I'm not inviting strangers into my house with my little kids.
Just
I'm
living in
sorry.
house. Right.
But they
Right.
did. And so we lived with that couple for about a month. There was a property behind our church that the church owned, and it had like a little studio apartment that opened up, and my pastor rented it to us for like $250 a month. So we stayed there for about 6 months, and then we ended up finding our first apartment there. And so then fast forward 3 years later, maybe 3.5 years later, God's moving on my husband about pioneering in New Jersey. And so he fought it for a while, and then finally said to my pastor, like, listen, I can't deny that this is God. I don't want to do it. And so my pastor was like, the fact that you don't want to do it means it's all God. And so that was July of 2016. And then January 2017, we got announced in Prescott to go pioneer in New Jersey.
Wow.
At that point, we had 3 children.
I think right there is a great spot to stop your story for our regular listeners. Definitely, we want to hear more about your discipleship experience and your ministry experiences. That story leading up to that, I'm literally sitting here and I'm forgetting to ask things. I'm so into your story. I'm like, oh my gosh, what happened next? What happens next? Like how God clearly spoke to you. But man, I'm excited to hear the second half. We'll save the rest of our conversation for our premium subscribers. Just for our listeners, the links to subscribe are in the show notes below, and every dollar that we get through any premium subscription, it goes directly to World Evangelism. We don't keep a dime. And so for our regular listeners, we thank you for joining us, and we will be right back for the second half for our premium subscribers.